What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. This is season 6. Holy crap, episode 3. And this is special for me. So, Mr. Tim Sonnefeld is, you're on the West Coast now.
I am.
But thank you so much for doing this and working with the time. But yeah, thank you
No
so much for
problem.
hanging out, buddy.
Sorry I was a couple minutes late. I'm actually in a session right now in Studio A at Sunset Sound, and it was like we were doing a take, and I was like, "All right, we got it. Peace."
Good, pretty good. Can you talk about who you're working with, or is it like hushy
hush? It's this guy. It's this guy Jim. He lives in Alabama. He lives in Muscle Shoals, Alabama these days, nice. Which is cool because all those, a lot of those guys who played on all the Muscle Shoals sound stuff are still down there. And we're actually doing like kind of a jazz record right now. I've got a whole really great jazz rhythm section there. And we have a singer singing. It's cool. It's really fun. And but yeah, it's a whole band doing live takes. So literally I was like on the floor getting the band ready and directing the group. And then like, all right, that was great. Peace. And I messed up. So like I literally did the classic like West Coast, the world revolves around me thing where I was like, oh, it's definitely at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then I'm like, let me check those texts with Mark. And I'm like, nope, it's not. It's a 4-minute song and we have 7 minutes. Go. So yeah, that was good.
Well, dude, I appreciate you. How often do you get to work at that studio?
I've been working here a lot lately. I am so lucky. Like, I mean, it's why I moved to LA, but like, everybody here is very serious about making music. The music scene is, everybody knows like, oh, we're making music in LA. This is on the world stage. This is for the public to consume. And I love that. And, and there's so many amazing historic studios here. A lot of the amazing historic studios on the East Coast are closing, not so much out here. So it's, and it's sad and it sucks, but I'm not going to be the one to save the East Coast. So I was like, peace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit sad, but I enjoy working out here. It's great.
I mean, at some point though, I mean, you had so many irons in the fire for so many years out here. I mean, it was time. It was time for you to kind of,
I still do. I mean, Milk Boy recording in Philadelphia is still my home away from home. I literally sleep on the owner Jamie's couch when I come into Philly. If I'm working a few days in a row, I'll just schedule 4 days there and I'll just sleep on the couch and hang out. And, so I still have all the benefits of Philly and I get to be out here. I've sort of cheated my way into a good life.
Yeah, that's so dope, dude. Well, listen, I want to, since we don't have a lot of time, I always ask this of all my guests because I'm so curious. And you have such a rich history, like in terms of your career so far. But like, what's your earliest musical memory?
My earliest musical memory is very specific. I was probably 3 or 4. My father doesn't remember, but he remembers this pretty well too. I think I was 3, and we're listening to Abbey Road. And Octopus's Garden was my favorite jam at the time. And that came on and I just start running around the room like a madman, jumping on the couches, jumping off of the couches. And I smacked my head on the corner of the table and I knocked myself clean out. And it scared the shit out of my dad. And he had to call my mom and be like, what do we do? So that's my earliest, but like still that song comes on, the little special thing, and a little bit of fear comes in.
PTSD.
Like, yeah.
It's surprising that you remember that if you knocked yourself clean, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you have like were your parents like super into music, like in the house? Like, did you grow up just around that stuff? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, much to my mom's, it's funny because they were both into music, but in their own special way. My father just like loved rock and roll, Beatles, Zeppelin, all the way to like Molly Hatchet, Skynyrd, and he had this huge stereo system. We had 8 like enormous speakers in our living room, like all around the living room. They were kind of like the tables to put your beer on next to the couches and stuff. And he would just crank that thing up to 10 and we would rock out so hard when I was a kid. I remember it hurting and being like, this is awesome, but it also hurts. And it, and he wasn't not into this stuff, but my mother was way more into like the Temptations, the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, just a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more soulful music. And and Bonnie Raitt, that was her shit. Just Bonnie Raitt.
Okay.
So we would listen to all those records in the car. And she was always driving me places, and I was always hanging out at my house with my dad. So it was like Skynyrd turned up to 10 at home with my dad, and Temptations on real chill in the car with my mom. My dad's like a pretty good guitar player too, so he taught me how to play guitar early on.
Oh, okay. Dude, this explains so much. This is just like it's all connecting for me right now. So okay, all right. So let's talk about a little bit about like how old were you? So let's go past knocking yourself out.
I did that already.
Yeah. So where were you? How old were you when you saw your dad play guitar and you're like, what is that?
Let me think. I'm trying to get the songs right.
You're all film noir. Yeah, it's cool.
I'm all film noir. It's pretty cool. Sorry, repeat the question. I was concentrating too much on the. How old was I when?
So like when you saw your dad playing and you were like, what is he doing? What is that?
Very, very early on, and he had such a rad technique to get me into it. Because he was like, this kid's gonna be good at stuff. Because he wasn't professional, he was like, he worked on computers. That was his trade. And he had always wanted to be in a band, and he kind of like had a little band with his brother when he was younger, but they never did, they never even played shows, I don't think. But so he had this awesome technique where he would fret the chords and he would make me just smack the strings as early as 3 years old, and to the point where I thought I knew how to play the guitar. Like he would have me doing that, and he would play like Puff the Magic Dragon or, some song he knew I would be into. And when I got my first guitar at the age of like, I think it was Christmas 1986. So I was 6 when he got me a little tiny classical guitar, like a child-sized classical guitar. And I thought that I already knew how to play because I was like, oh yeah, I play guitar with dad all the time. And I think that like blind, ridiculous confidence was really good for me and was enough to be like, oh, actually, okay, this is actually pretty easy. So, I really like, and he taught me very well. Like as soon as I got a guitar, like day 3 of me, he let me just dick around for 3 days. And then he was like, all right, this is a C chord. And I was like, that hurts. And he was like, shut up. It's a C chord. And I was like, oh. So yeah,
that's pretty amazing, man. So like, were you like serious about it immediately? Did you feel
there? Well, there was a time I was early on. I was like, yeah, cool. I'm going to be a rock star. This is easy. And then I got really like 1989 was just such a great year for hip hop and R&B. And I bought my first album with my own money. It was Young MC's Stone Cold Rhymin'. I got that record, and I also got the DOC's No One Can Do It Better. And I got an NWA single, I think that same day. And I stole one of them because it was parental advisory, and and they wouldn't let me buy it, so I just stuffed it in my jacket. But yes, I was also stealing things at 9. But
statute of limitations. Sorry,
I got really like Tone Loc, just that whole thing that was going on right then. And Yo MTV Raps was on, and so that was all I was watching. And so I kind of like put the guitar down for a minute, and I got a keyboard that had a sampler in it, and I started like making awful beats on the keyboard. And I was like, guitars are for losers, and that took a few years to like kind of get back to like playing the guitar. But it was that, I think that was a good little segue anyway. It was like an introduction to other ways of making music, which was great too,
So were you like pre-teen at that time, or were you?
Yeah, I was 9.
Okay.
And that was huge. And then when I was 11 was the year that Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, Pearl Jam's 10, and Nirvana's Nevermind came out. I think at least 2 of those records came out on the same freaking day.
Yeah.
And so that was, that kind of like knocked me back into like, oh, the guitar is awesome. It was just what was popular at the time, and
yeah. I love that about that. I did not know that about. So I have a Pearl Jam tattoo on my arm, and that's Eddie Vedder right there. So
there he is.
Yep. So it's like, I feel like we're around the same age. So I think that makes sense for us.
I was 1980. You?
79.
79. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very formative moment for us. You know, you were 12, I was 11. It was just like, holy shit, this is rad.
Think about all that music that came out right then, man. Like,
dude, those records, Siamese Dream,
Bad Motorfinger.
I think Gish was 91. Siamese Dream would have been 93. Bad Motorfinger, what a great record.
Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine's debut was a year later. It was crazy. It was so good. It was
a great decade for guitar.
Yeah. And then 93 would have been 36 Chambers as well. I mean, it was just like music was in a moment, you know, and it was just, yeah, just creativity was bubbling from everywhere. It was amazing.
And you're in Philly then?
I was in like King of Prussia area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So did you, as you kind of got a little bit older and getting back into guitar and everything, like at what point were you like, I want to like get a group of guys together and play some music? Like, how can I make this happen? How can I make what I'm hearing on these records? Like when I'm hearing on 10, how do I do that? How do I organize people? Like, when did that happen?
Ooh, I wasn't very good at it at first. I had a band with a bunch of my friends I think by 6th grade. So probably not too, like probably by 92, we had a band. I know we had already been together for a while by 93, because I think that's when Kurt Cobain passed. And I remember we like threw a tribute to him, like anybody gave a shit about us. But we were very self-important. But like we were okay, you know, like we had a band, and there were like 2 other groups of kids in our middle school that had bands, and we could all like play the songs reasonably okay. I was singing, so the vocals weren't on point or anything, but you know, we were doing our best.
Yeah.
So
how did the multi-instrumentalist thing come about? Was it out of necessity? Like what drew you to like want to grab? Because I do the same thing, man, and I was just always curious and just wanted to play everything.
Definitely. And so by the time I was 11, somebody had gotten I think my brother wanted to play bass, so he had a bass, and then he didn't really like that, and I was already like getting good enough at the guitar that it was like, okay, guitar's Tim's thing, and he didn't like the bass, so he like left that in my room one day, so I had a bass, and then and I'd always played keyboards too, because my mother wasn't a musician, but she was like, I heard somewhere that it's really important to have a foundation on the keyboard as well. So I had a little like cheap digital piano that I practiced on a lot. And then my brother quit bass and got a drum kit. And so there was a drum kit in the house too. So, you know, so it was just like, nobody's home, I'm going to bang on the drum kit. And I know Andy's going to come home and get pissed at me, but I don't care, you know, that kind of thing. Like, you very
Step Brothers moment. Did you touch my drum set?
Exactly.
Dude, I find it really interesting because I want to segue into talking about Townhall, and I want to run out of time because did you guys all meet in college?
Yes. Did I meet any of those guys before? No, I met all of them in college. Yeah.
Okay. Were you guys all at the Philly? Was it the
University of the Arts?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
So quick aside. So I went to see Mo is another one of my favorite bands, jam bands in particular. Yeah. And I went to see them in Delaware at Kahunaville. You remember that outdoor venue? Do you remember that thing?
I remember that show because that was the only time we played there with them. And that was also Brian Malouf, who was the head of A&R for RCA Records, was there, and he signed us based on that show.
Really?
That was a life-changing show for me. I remember everything about that show. Do you remember my favorite part about that show was that I think it was the keyboard player in Mo, who we did a lot of shows with them and we hung out with them a fair bit, but I don't remember any of the guys' names. So I'm sorry, guys in Mo, you're awesome. I salute you. I'm a jerk. But the keyboard player, I think, was the one who like such a like sophomoric joke, but it was really good because it worked. He put like some huge like skin of a dildo on top of the microphone that the drummer was going to sing into, and the drummer didn't notice it until he was already playing and had to sing background vocals, and then was like, oh shit. And it was
I don't remember
that happened at that show.
Oh my God, I don't remember that. Well,
the first time that the drummer hit the mic for some background vocals, there was a dick in his face, and
What's funny, so they didn't have a keyboard player then. They do now, but
okay.
It was probably so Chuck and Rob and Al are the three, like two guitars,
The
bass,
main dudes. Okay,
and then
the
Jim
bass player
was
then pulled the joke. It might have been the bass player.
probably.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, I'm the kind of guy who, when I go see a band, I want to get there to see the opener. I want to support the opener. I want to see, like, okay, who is this band? If Mo is like all about this band opening for them, I'm sure they're great. And I remember going there, and you guys came on stage, and you might have, I can't remember what you guys. Do you remember what you opened with? It might have been.
Yeah. I that's one thing I don't remember our sets from them. It might exist.
It was probably Confusion. I bet you guys opened with Confusion.
That sounds like a thing we would do at that moment right then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It was probably that, but I remember hearing that and just being like, just struck. Like,
that was
just
a tight little horn lick. That was all George and Nate. I think Mark might have come up with some of that too. But man, it was a really tight little horn lick. It was
that
good.
whole song, and then like your super staccato stuff that you do in there. Like, that's why I was saying everything makes sense now with like the R&B and the rock stuff that you grew up with, because
Yeah.
you have all that Motown in your hands and you have the rock stuff in your hands, and you listen to something like Masters of the Universe and you guys doing that thing too. I was like, what the hell is this band? Like,
that was dude. I mean, I still get to make a lot of music with George. When I'm back in Philly, I still will hire Nate for any session musician work I can, because he's so great. I mean, everybody in that band was just so great. Mark lives in fucking Salt Lake City, Utah now, so I don't see him very often. But
oh man,
you know, just great guys, great musicians, and so much fun to work with. That was such a great time in my life.
Oh man, and that record stands the test of time too. It's still, it's so relevant. Like anytime it comes on, like
I don't know if it does, but I'm glad you feel that way. I hear it. It was the first record that I made on that level where I was like, we were in a real studio for the whole damn thing, and Ian Cross was producing it, a good friend of mine, my mentor, like a mentor of mine, and I was kind of co-producing it, but unofficially. And he was like mad about that. He was like, "You're actually producing this damn record, but you're ruining it for me," you know. And so I just see a lot of mistakes that I listen to that record and I hear the mistakes that we made. Not actually like audible mistakes, but like, for example, I remember we didn't really have our terminology down, and Ian would be like, "So what, should this drum sound be like tight, or should it be kind of ambient?" And at the time, there was that like early 2000s ambient music craze going on. You know what I mean? And so I heard the word ambient and I was like, well, I'm not really into that music, so I obviously don't want the drums to sound ambient. But then I would show him songs that we wanted, and the drums actually sounded ambient, in that there was a lot of like ambient room noise on the drums or something. And I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't want it to be ambient, but like this. And he's like, that's ambient. And I'd be like, no, it's not, you know, and all that, just like us fighting over terms that neither of us really even knew. Well, he knew what he meant because he had been producing records for decades. I had no idea what I was saying. And I was like, yeah, this. And he was like, okay. And then it turned into not what we wanted.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I love that record, and I forever the rest of my life. I mean, for years. I mean, I used to cover stuff with my band. We would play stuff off that record because we just loved it. Like our band just loved your music, and
it was a fun to make. And I think the songs were good. I think George is a great writer, and I think Nate and me and Mark did some good work writing too. And so, you know, so that's the good part.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the session of putting those songs together, arrangement wise and everything? Like, was it a group effort? Did George try to do a lot of it, or did you? It seemed like you guys were very collaborative.
100%. Well, George and I were kind of like the de facto. We didn't even know what the word producer meant really at the time that we started those sessions, but we were de facto producers of the band. We were arranging the band, but the musical personalities of Nate and Mark and Kevin were very strong. And so, and especially Kevin, I mean, he's a very interesting, different drummer. Ian, the guy that produced that record, called him Picasso of the drums. He's like, he doesn't play drum beats that sound like drum beats, but somehow they work. And so, yeah, that was really, yeah, I mean, we all sat in a room for hours, years, arranging those songs. Like that was our job. We were making a living in that band, so that was nice. So we just would get up in the morning, have some coffee, and go into the practice room in the house that we rented and just play until we were like, okay, that's good. And then so we had that shit completely arranged. And the really hard part, we were kind of unproducible because Ian would be like, what if that bass line's a little busy? Why don't we just try to take out a few notes? And we'd be like, how? It's the bass line to the song. And he'd be like, well, you got to give me a little, like, just try. And we'd be like, we don't know how. Sorry.
Yeah. That's funny, man.
That sucked for him.
Well,
I feel bad.
You know what I think when you say Kevin, the most interesting beat on that record, I think, is Premonitions, like how he
boom. Snare on one, no kick. It's a very interesting little drum beat. I love it. It's very
Did
good.
he write all that stuff, or did you guys say, hey man, do this?
That song, I remember that pretty specifically. And George and Kevin, if they see this, they can chime in and tell me I'm full of shit. But what I remember, George had that cool little guitar part, that just a little E minor, A minor, C major progression, really simple. And he was playing it and he was like, hey guys, I have a new song. And he was just playing it. And Kevin sat down at the drum set and played something like that right away. And then refined it within the next hour that we rehearsed it, to the point that within an hour he had that. And we were all like, oh, that's weird. And I probably, because I was always like trying to popify. I was such a producer from day one. I was like, well, you're never going to hear this on the radio, boy. So like, I was like, yo, why don't you put the kick on the one? Maybe not, and I was trying to get Kevin to do that. And he had this look that he would just give me, like, you are so corny. And, and he gave me the you're a corny idiot look. And I was like, all right, fine. And then that was what it was. And I love it. And it's really good.
Yeah. Is he still playing?
And then another little fun thing on that I'll give you, because I feel like you'll like this one. This character, amazing musician named Basie Paul, who he was Lauryn Hill's bass player for a long time. And he was also... he played bass for UB40 for a long time. He was in the studio while I was cutting bass for that song. And he was really like pushing me to like lay it back even further and further and further. And that was a lot of fun. And then I know Ian unlaid it back a little bit. He like in Pro Tools, he like slid it a little bit. Not as laid back, but it was really fun. And Basie Paul was like all about it, and it was making me like, as a hero bass player of mine, sitting there like, yeah, and I'm like, he likes me. Cool. That was fun.
Is Kev still playing? Is he still playing like around Philly, or what's he doing?
Kev still plays. I don't think he plays in a band. He has a family. He has a girl and 2 boys, and him and his wife are, they're doing that whole thing, just that, like, making a home and a family work. I never did that part of life, so I can't even I can't even speak to that.
Right. Well, I mean, I feel like, so after that record came out, was the Mo show where you guys got signed, was New Song already out? It was, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so. It might, it could have been.
It was 2000. It was after. I remember it was after 9/11. Because I remember that Mo, it was the first time they played Plane Crash since 9/11. Because I remember they talked about it a little bit. They played their song Plane Crash. And it wasn't close to 9/11, but it might have been a year later or something like that,
I'm going to have to look into this, because now you're making me feel like I have a false memory, because I remember it being earlier than that. And I sort of remember... because by 2001, we had all already quit school. But I remember getting the first call about, like, RCA has offered you a deal. And I remember we were still all in school, and we all quit shortly after that. So I might be wrong on this timeline, and I might have made up a complete fantasy about that show. Or maybe we played a second show with Mo at Kahunaville, which is also very possible, even though I said, no, that's the only time we ever played that venue with Mo. So I could be wrong about these things. It was, after all, 22 years ago-ish.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing. And you guys put out so much music. I mean, dude, I still crank anytime I'm driving and like Kick the Can comes on, shuffle. Woo, man. That's some of that stuff.
Yes.
Oh, and that drum beat too, man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, straight hip hop groove.
So that one was fun. That was the first Townhall song that I actually produced. And that one was really funny because I just whiffed it. Like we went to what was it, KGEM recording in Philly, I think, which is closed down now. But the engineer was really talented. I forget his name, which is good because I shouldn't say it because I'm going to talk shit. So like he did a pretty bad job capturing the drum sounds. Like they were very distorted in a very bad way that I really, as the producer of that track, should have caught, but I was extremely inexperienced, and I just didn't notice that the hi-hat track was terribly distorted and that the overhead tracks were like unusable. So my friend Walt Bass and Ian Cross mixed that song, and they were they were like, these drum sounds are awful. We don't know how we're going to make this happen, but they did such a good job of saving it. They saved it. I couldn't have saved it. But that was me being a shitty producer, but it came out okay because I had really good engineer friends who saved it.
Yeah. I mean, I like how I thought that was intentional. I thought you guys were trying
I just showed all my cards, but now I'm going to backtrack. Yes, I tried to get a really trashy drum set, but I love how trashy they are. They're very trashy sounds. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's such a great player, and that's very good. And that was him. That was another thing. He was like, that was a thing where now like drumming has progressed a lot. Now, a lot of the guys who are like playing now are really good at it, but nobody was really doing it back then, where they're like actually laying the hi-hat behind the kick and the snare. And Kevin was one of the first people I knew who was really into actually like putting the hi-hat like almost a 30-second note behind the kick and the snare to get sort of this like swing that wasn't really there. And you hear people do it. I just heard an Errol Garner record from like 1950 where he's doing that. But like, you know, now everybody does that and they're really good at it and they're really, you know.
He was. I mean, was he like a Quest fan? Like, were you guys like into that
Huge,
record?
I mean, like, dude, the Roots were like absolute, you know, Bible of like how to. Questlove was probably the first drummer that we had ever heard doing stuff like that, where he was like intentionally not using his limbs together, you know, and it was like, ooh, that's tricky, nice. And then I had the amazing fortune of working with the Roots crew at a lot of times after that. So, I mean, so great. And most notably Leonard Hubbard, rest in peace. I worked with him a lot. That was awesome. But yeah, I mean, those guys were our heroes. Like, Do You Want More was the Bible at that time for us of like what a band should sound like. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And like I can see now that's like the Philly swagger. You know what I mean? There's like Philly has a sound, man. It does. You know, there's like a vibe in Philly. Like if you kind of go out and see live music at night, there's like Philly's a soulful town.
Philly players are nothing. I know so many incredible instrumentalists that live in LA and even that were born here, but there is like percentage wise, there's like Philly musicians, you can't, like, people won't put up with you not grooving in Philly. I specifically remember like getting kicked off the stage at like jam sessions when I was younger because I just wasn't doing. It's just like, get the hell out of here, kid. You suck. You know, there's that. So like, out of fear, I think, at least when I was coming up, like out of fear, you had to get pretty good or else somebody was going to be like, nope.
Yeah.
And it was very embarrassing.
Well, dude, and this is the last thing I'll say because I got so much I want to ask you and run out of time, but like That's the thing about Townhall, and I put it in my post on Instagram and everything. Like, people should go back and listen to the records that you guys put out, because there's obviously like a trajectory that you guys were going on in terms of where you were taking the music, and maybe by American Dreams you guys were trying to get a little bit more mainstream. I could tell that you guys,
100%. We needed money, man. We were like,
yeah,
let's try to, and also George and I were both getting really into the concept of songcraft, and like, let's write better songs. Not saying that, you know, whatever. I'm not talking shit on any of the previous songs, but like, we were getting more enamored with more current songwriters at the time, and we were like, oh wow, this is like, you can make a good song in this time period. I mean, that was what, 2005. It was like, you can write a good song and people will react to it, which is still true. You know, I think it always will be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone that watches this, and I preach this all the time, but like, go back and check out those records. There's so much. I mean, the depth of the music and the musicianship, and if anyone ever could, is there any stuff that's like video anywhere on YouTube of you guys?
There's a documentary
I remember that,
of Evil Townhall. So Evil Townhall is in like 2005, right as we were releasing the American Dreams record. Nate called a meeting and he said, hey, Amos Lee's gonna pay me $500 a gig. I'm sick of being broke. I quit. I love you guys. I'm sorry. Yeah. And like, I literally cried at the meeting. You know, I was devastated. And then we got my good friend Dave Strime. All of our good friend Dave Strime played keyboards with us, and we turned into Evil Townhall, as we affectionately call it now. And we weren't as good of a band. We had kind of lost the magic, I think, because we were a little too hungry to be like a pop band. You know, it was kind of that thing, but it was cool, and we made interesting music. And Dave's amazing, and he's now Amos Lee's piano player. Incredible guy. And dude is like an encyclopedia of piano playing. He's insane. But yeah, we turned into a different band. And so there's a documentary of the Townhall that nobody really liked. People literally stopped coming to our shows. I mean, like, we were like selling out the TLA, and then we played one time and we came close to selling it out. And then the next time we played, there were like 300 people in the audience. It was just like, people were like, we're not going to see these guys anymore.
Yeah.
So that
I saw you guys at the TLA on a New Year's Eve. My then girlfriend, but now wife, we came up. We were both huge fans, and and came up to see you guys.
People together on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, man.
Those were the days. No, the New Year's Eve shows were so much fun. That was always a great time. And
yeah. I wish there was more video though, because like, watching you guys all switch instruments every other tune and stuff, that was impressive, dude. It wasn't gimmicky. It was impressive.
It felt like it was gimmicky. And I also, my complaint was always like, there's way too much time between songs. I mean, it was like, you know, I would pick up a guitar that Mark had just been slinging away on, and it's just like not even close to in tune. And it takes me a full song length to tune the guitar before we can actually start playing. That was my complaint with it, but it was cool. I feel like it was a little bit gimmicky, but you know, I think it was cool too. You know,
that was super fun to watch, man. Super fun to watch. So so post Townhall, Tim heads out to the West Coast.
Yeah,
then you win some freaking Grammys, dude. So what?
I got a few of them on the East Coast.
Oh, did you? I didn't realize that. Okay.
So the first record I was involved in that was Grammy nominated was I produced and played on this amazing group's record, the Dixie Hummingbirds, like a classic gospel quartet from South Carolina that moved to Philly. You know, like older dudes. They had been making records since like the 30s. And I made their final record. It was so much fun. The record, honestly, I don't think I did a great job. I'm a little bit embarrassed because of the legacy of especially Ira Tucker, who was like James Brown's number one influence was this guy, Ira Tucker. Incredible. Check him out. Ira Tucker, Dixie Hummingbirds. Any of the listeners who don't know that shit, get that shit. It's so good. Amazing. I became really good friends with him towards the end of his life. We would have a beer after every session. He would tell me, like, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was his best friend. It was crazy. It was just like, what? This is amazing. So much fun. And I And that record, I didn't feel like it came out great, but that was nominated for a Grammy, did not win for best gospel performance, traditional gospel performance. And then I had the fortune of working on Usher's record, and that was Ian Cross was vocal producer, and chief engineer on that record. He's the same guy who produced the new song. He also was a producer on that Usher record, and unfortunately, his sister got sick. She had ovarian cancer, and she ended up passing away. And he just needed some help from me at that time while he was dealing with that. And so I got the incredible opportunity to do work on that record, and that got 2009, I think, or 2010. I forget which year. Best R&B record. Then I moved to the West Coast, and then my friend David and I did a lot of work on Elvis Costello's 2 records ago, and that one won for best like pop vocal album or something. It was awesome. Elvis is amazing.
Oh my God.
Thomas and Davey Farringer, his rhythm section, just incredible. Just awesome musicians. So that was incredible.
Are there days where you like pinch yourself and you're like, what the hell is this life?
Every goddamn day. Every day. My life is it's great. I get to make music with like the greatest musicians in the world.
Oh, man.
Pretty much every day.
That's so crazy,
That's
dude.
awesome.
I'm so happy. Like I was so happy to see. First of all, I saw that little clip that George put up the other day of you guys playing at Hotel Cafe, and that made me so happy, dude.
That was so much fun.
When I had him on the show, we talked a lot, about Townhall too, and I just was asking, I was like, is there ever a chance you guys will ever put anything else out again? Like, just even if it's under a different name, but you guys, he's like, I wouldn't count it out. I wouldn't say it's
all right
out of the realm of possibility for us to collaborate and do something.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sure he, in particular, and I think we talked about this a little bit when he was on, but he was like, the way I sang on the new song is nowhere near how I sing now, which is totally true.
No, well, I mean, I watched him learn how to sing, like in a studio. I watched him learn, and it was a crazy thing to watch because he's such an incredible performer, and live, he had no fear, and he was a really great live performer. And I remember the first time we did a vocal in the studio, and it was just like, that's weird. This doesn't sound like it usually does. And I can't believe it because I didn't know a guy who was scared, but he was probably scared. He's like got his first like Neumann U47 up in his face, and he's like, shit, how do I do this? And I think it happens to everybody. But God, yeah, but I mean, he's learned over the year, by the time he did his solo record, he knew everything about how to sing. By the time we did probably the American Dreams record, he had figured out how to sing in a studio pretty damn well. He wasn't a stranger to it, but yeah.
How do you approach this, Tim, when you're dealing with like a vocalist like that who you can tell is a little bit timid or a little bit shy or whatever, or having a hard time? Like, how do you make them feel at ease?
It depends. I think a thing that a lot of people who don't make records regularly don't realize about the process is that it all, like the record I'm making right now, there's a good budget. And if we do a vocal today and the artist doesn't love it, he can come back and do it again tomorrow. And that's not a huge problem. But a lot of records that you end up hearing, the budget is, especially today, the budget is so low that there's only one day dedicated to lead vocals. And if the singer's sick or just isn't experienced or whatever the problem is, and they give a bad performance, that's what happened. And they can either figure out a way to afford to do another take some other time, or that's the record and that's what happens. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And it's really hard to put your voice. So it depends. If this is the only day we have to make a record and I have to coach this vocalist into giving their best performance, I'm not going to give them that much direction because a lot of direction is going to murder their morale. And as soon as you lose somebody's morale, you're not getting a good performance out of them, no matter what. So in that situation, I'm very delicate with somebody. And honestly, I can't coach them that much. If I know that we have a year to finish this record and we've got 20 more vocal sessions or 50 more vocal sessions or 10 more. Sure. Like I'm going to, hey, why don't you try this? And as soon as I say, hey, why don't you try this? They know that they're doing something that I don't like.
Right.
And, I have a rule. I do at least 3 takes of anybody, no matter what the situation, at least 3 vocal takes before I say a word about their performance. And during the first take, if there's other people in the room who I don't really know well, I will instruct them, like, if any of you say a fucking word after this take, I am going to be very angry and you're not allowed in this room anymore unless you paid for the record. But even then, so like it's such a morale killer. And I've seen it happen so many times. I've seen incredible producers and I wonder how they get such good results out of people, but I've seen incredible producers after like 6 words be like, okay, no, you're going to have to open up your mouth a little more. And, it's like, man, how you just made this person feel like shit,
Right. Yeah.
I'm not against making somebody feel like shit if I think I'm going to get a good take out of them. If I think I'm going to do right by them by pounding them into, by just like pummeling them. But that's not usually an effective mechanism,
No. And you seem like you have such a good energy too. I bet you're wonderful to work with in the studio in terms of like getting good performances out of people. Dude,
everybody who hasn't fired me said the same thing.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's the thing. Is like I feel like you're you have a massive like knowledge about music. You are a seasoned performer. Like when you're getting something good out of a performer. So that's a really kind of classic, great producer quality, I would suppose. Like usually those cats are players most of the time, like or have at some point done something.
Look at the Anderson Cooper interview with Rick Rubin that's going around lately. Have you watched that?
Yeah.
I mean, Rick is such an incredible person and, and is absolutely my idol. And he, claims to not know much about music. I haven't ever
I don't believe that.
I know a lot of people who have. And, he gets great performances out of them. I don't think any of that is a prerequisite. It helps me. It's nice for me to know, like, hey, maybe if like it's nice to be specific with a drummer, for instance, like, hey, why don't you switch the kick drum up or whatever,
Right.
It's easy it's good to have that knowledge. But I think if I didn't know, I feel like I could still get there, be like, something's wrong. It might take a little longer. I don't know.
Tim, I had never worked with a producer before, and I went to Nashville a year and a half ago to cut a single in the Wood Brothers studio.
Okay, great.
And John O'Ricks, the drummer of the Wood Brothers, produced the track. And I have a trio, and I was playing keys on this particular tune, and we were doing it to a click. And I was in a completely different room on a grand piano, and the bass player and the drummer were in the room together. And we were burying the click. It was great. Felt, pretty good. And then John was like, hey, after we did, 3 or 4 takes, he was like, hey guys, what do you think about not doing it to a click? And I was like, I mean, I'm open to that, whatever. I can't see the guys for cues. I mean, there was like, hits and stuff, but it all was fine. And it sounded awesome. So I was just like, maybe you don't need to cut to a click all the time.
You don't need to cut to a click all the time. The record I'm doing right now, the song that we just finished, literally 45 seconds before I turned my computer on, no click.
Yeah.
If it's working, and it's not because those guys are great. Great people cut to clicks. Great people don't cut to clicks. It's just how it works the best for everybody in that moment,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like and sometimes there's got to be a little bit of human elasticity,
It's nice.
Yeah, it is.
Well, a lot of times the click, if somebody, on a technical level, nerd shit, like if everybody gets a little bit ahead of the click, then you have to drag for a second to get back to it. And that doesn't feel good for that moment that you're dragging. And if everybody gets a little bit behind the click, you have to rush to get back up to it. Whoa, that was scary. And it doesn't feel good for that moment that you're catching back up to it. And if there's no click and everybody's staying at a good tempo and it feels good, then you don't have those moments. And those are the moments that we end up having to go in and fix. Oh, the drum's rushing a little bit right here. He might not have rushed that if there weren't a click. Of course, he probably would have rushed the whole damn song if there wasn't a click. We all know that, drummers, but he might not have. And it's if you have the time and the what's the word I'm looking for? The opulence in the studio to try a few takes without the click, do it. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a quality thing to try for people, and then people get too married to the idea of it. I think because you can cut things and paste things. I'm like, don't do that. Ray Charles didn't do that. Let's not do that.
It all depends on the kind of music you're making. It all depends on what the artist's vision is. Like there isn't a right. That's the only thing I don't get annoyed at anybody's way of doing anything. If you're doing something the way you do it and it works for you and it sounds good to you, the artist, that's great. It annoys me when somebody's like, oh no, we have to do it this way because that's how it has to be done. And it's like, no, that's absolutely not true.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. Open-mindedness with that stuff going into a studio. Hey, last question.
All right.
How did you get hooked up with Jack and Ryan and those guys? Like when did I know that Pomplamoose thing that you did, that mashup? I didn't know you did that until about a week and a half ago, that you were part of that one track.
The
Bee Gees Jamiroquai one.
Oh man. So that's is the first time we ever worked together, was that song. Mm-hmm. That's great. I mean, dude, Natalie is such a monster. Jack is such a great musician, such a great keyboard player, such a great coach, such a great cheerleader. And I don't know if anybody knows, if anyone here is or isn't a Pomplamoose fan, forgive me, Jack and Natalie, for giving people insight into your creative process. But they come in with basically no arrangement at all. And they get 6 other incredible musicians. I believe it's Rob Humphreys is playing drums on that one. Sam Wilkes is playing bass on that one. Just great musicians, usually from here in LA. And just, and they just arrange it on the spot. And that one was incredible to behold, because it was my first time watching them work and working with them. And just, that was so much fun. Natalie just has such a beautiful voice, and she's such a great band leader. Her and Jack are just great band leaders, Totally. And if you watch that, Rob Humphreys, the studio we recorded that at, Red Star Recording in Silver Lake here in LA. From the control room, I can't see the room that we usually put the drums in. And Rob Humphreys is one of these drummers who has he's got a tambourine and a shaker and a bunch of toys handy, and he's very good at switching from 2 sticks to a tambourine and a stick, and I'll play the ride cymbal with the tambourine, and it sounds like a drummer playing with a stick and a tambourine's playing. I mean, he's just absolutely incredible. And so where I was sitting there, by the second take, after he had pretty much gotten his arrangement, I was like, oh shit, is there a percussionist in there too? Like, I didn't even know it was happening. It was fun. I'm like running the session, and I had no idea what's going on. That was so much fun. And yeah, that was probably 6 years ago I started working with them, and I just did a session with them. Is it Monday right now, or is it Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
Sunday night I did a session with them.
Oh, sick.
Amazing stuff. They're doing a new band called Magazine that doesn't include Natalie, and Natalie's kind of doing some other cool stuff. But check out Magazine. It's awesome. That's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny because I was watching the Dead Wax John Alasia episode, and they're like, hey, Tim. And then it went over to you, and I was like, oh my God, what the hell?
I am.
So and that's what I was just like, man, that's so cool that because those guys are just, encyclopedias of music.
100%.
And I was like, it makes complete sense that Tim would be involved with these cats, helping out doing stuff, because you guys are all the same kind of mind. It's like a hive mind kind of situation going on in a way.
It's I mean, Jack and Ryan are a little younger than me, but I feel like if we would have all come up in the same town at the same time, we would have been in each other's bands and stuff. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Dude, yeah, it's great. I mean, I love all this Scary Pocket stuff they've been doing, and
amazing.
It's just killing. And I was like,
Gary Goldings, come on.
Oh my God, yeah.
Gary Goldings.
And anytime Tim LaFave or somebody like that shows up on one of those videos, I'm just like, come on, man. How good is this going to be?
Well, that's the other reason to live in LA. Once again, no offense to Philly, but in LA, everybody here is taking music seriously and taking the music business seriously. And I feel like this is a thing I say over and over and over again. I know so many incredibly talented people in Philly who are just kind of like, yeah, I make the music I make, and I make my little albums, and I sell them to my parents and my friends, and that's what I do, and they're happy with that. And I think that's great if you are happy with that. But I wasn't happy with that. And guys like Tim LaFave and guys like Jack and Ryan, even though Jack's really San Francisco based, he's not LA, but same attitude. Like, music is very serious for him, and it should be heard by lots of people. He wants to make music that touches people's souls, not just like, it's not a hobby for him,
You can tell, man. I mean, and it has to be a business at some sort of like time of the day, because you have to realize I got to put food on the table. I want to do what I love. If it's music, got to make sure it's a business too, Well,
if you're not making money making music, eventually you have to do something else to make money. And as soon as you start doing something else to make money, it's very hard to put quality into your music.
Yeah. Well, Jack is a beacon of light in that sense. Like, he really is. And you can apologize to him. Yeah, you can apologize to him and Ryan for how much I've blown up their inbox the past 2 years trying to get them on this show.
I'll do my best. I'll see.
Man. But all right. So Tim, let's do this lightning round get down and get you back to your thing here, man.
Yes, all right, sir.
So I'm gonna pop a metronome on.
Oh,
and Jesus. This is just we're gonna cruise in an altitude of about 112 BPM, because I love that. And I'm gonna ask you 10 questions, this or that, would you rather type thing. You can explain your answers if you'd like. You do not have to, but if you like.
And the metronome's there just to add like a Jeopardy level of like the clock is ticking.
100%.
Okay, good. I like it.
All right. So here we go.
All right.
Lennon or McCartney?
Man, Lennon.
Okay. Tape or digital?
Oh, man. Digital.
Okay. Young Guns or Tombstone?
Young Guns.
Okay. P-Bass or J-Bass?
P-Bass.
Rocky or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Rocky.
The Doors or The Dead?
Doors.
Okay. All right, you got to choose. I know these are different sports, but you got to choose. Eagles or Phillies?
Phillies.
Okay. Hot Fudge Sundae or Banana Split?
Oh, man, that's the best question you've had all day. Hot Fudge Sundae. Sure. No walnuts.
Okay. Ping pong or badminton?
Ping pong.
Okay. And then here's the last one, Tim. Sometimes it's the hardest, sometimes it's the easiest. If you could take one album, one record, and erase it from your memory, so you've never heard it before, just so you could go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would that be?
Well, that's good. That's so good. All right, that's the best question. You ask this same question to everyone?
Yep.
Wow, that's a really good one.
I always ask the first one and the last one. I bookend those two every time.
Okay, man. I hate. Oh yeah, now the metronome's getting to me. This is good. God, there's so many. Well, I'm just gonna go with my first instinct, even though I know it's wrong. Neutral Milk Hotels, In the Airplane Over the Sea. And the reason why that answer is wrong is because the first time I heard that record, I did not care for it that much. So I have to go through this. So I wonder if now that I've had all the experience that I've had, if I would hear it differently and I would like it as much as I do again, or if I would have to go through the same painful, like 6 listens before I got it thing again. I don't know, but that was fun too. I don't know. Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll have another answer. I'm going to start texting you a new answer to that every other day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's super duper hard, and I know it's sometimes for people, it's like that sunshine of the spot. Man, it's the same thing. I have a hard time with it because, a lot of people think I'm going to say 10, but 10 is not my favorite Pearl Jam record, first and foremost. Yield is my favorite.
Mine.
Is it?
Yield? It's not even in my top 2.
I mean, honestly, dude, like
think everyone knows what my top 2 are.
I think that for me, I come back to this record a lot. Jellyfish is Spilt Milk.
So good. I love that record so much.
That
I love
record
Jellyfish so much.
Yeah. That
I
band.
forget. Did they end up? I got the whole Dead Wax thing. My part got cut out of that recently. Did they end up doing an episode with one of the dudes from Jellyfish? That was on the table, and I don't know if it ever happened.
I don't know. Are you talking about is it Roger Joseph Manning?
I forget. I just remember being excited. It was like, oh, a guy from Jellyfish, and then they were like, oh, by the way, good, you saw the email. By the way, we're not doing the you thing anymore. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh. No, I don't know. I haven't seen that episode. If it came out, I'm sure I would have seen it and watched it.
Yeah.
I know that Produce Like a Pro, Warren Hewart, he's interviewed. Have you seen that one where he talks to
I've seen that show. I haven't seen one with any members of Jellyfish, but I have seen that show before. It's a great show.
Yeah, he definitely interviewed. Is it Roger Joseph Manning? Yeah, pretty sure he did him.
People's names. I'm terrible with names.
Me too. I'm bad about it too. But so that dude, he also worked with Beck and I think he still does. So
yeah,
you know, but yeah, it's hard to choose a record, man. But I like the idea of like experiencing something for the first time as, you know, more mature musician idea.
I feel like I have to explain my analog versus digital. I really liked working on analog, and my first like 12 records I did were probably all analog. The Townhall New Song record, we recorded everything to tape. We dumped a few things into Pro Tools to edit and then dumped them back to tape, and we mixed off of tape. And then what was the other record we did? The second record, American Dreams. We cut all that to tape, and then we dumped it to Pro Tools and edited it, and it stayed on Pro Tools to mix. But I just could not see making a record to tape and right now anymore.
Is it expensive?
Now it's expensive. It takes a lot longer, and budgets are just so low for the most part. You don't have the time. I mean, like if I was lucky enough for like my friend Joe, whose studio I'm sitting in right now, where like Jack White approached me and said, hey, let's make a record. And he was like, we're going to do it to tape. Then that would be a different story because we would have enough money and we'd have enough time and it wouldn't be a problem. And from what I've heard about him, he works pretty fast too. He doesn't really like to get down in the mud and, you know, get too precious with it all. So that would probably be a great experience. But, you know, for the most part, I don't think anyone would have a good time. Tape now, because we have the expectation, and the labels all have the expectation of, oh, you're doing this in the normal state of the art way. They don't have, you know, they don't care. They just want, you know, they're in the business of making music. They just want a product and they want it to happen. So yeah, I don't think that, so I say digital because I just 99.9% of the time, I wouldn't want to work on tape because it's just going to end with somebody being pissed at me, either the label or the artist. Like it's not going to end well, you know?
Right. Having never done it, is there really like a fidelity difference? Can you tell? Or you think the normal person?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Things just sound different going to tape. Number one, tape, if you hit tape hard, you're getting natural compression right onto the medium. Whereas digital there's no compression hitting the medium. It's pure. Tape is actually changing the EQ curve of what's hitting it. Tape has an EQ curve. It's rolling off a little bit of low end. It might be boosting a little bit of low end here. It's rolling off a little bit of high end. It might have a mid-range boost or a mid-range dip, depending on the formula of tape. It's very, you know, so yes, there's a fidelity difference, and it sounds good because our ears got used to hearing records recorded to tape, and because of you know, probably the Beatles records to begin with, but because of records from the 60s on and the Motown records and the Stax records, those records are hitting tape. They're getting compressed wildly sometimes. I mean, that Motown shit is hitting the tape so hard. If you've ever heard any of the, like, have you gotten any of the sessions where you have like every track and James Jamerson's bass from Ain't No Mountain High Enough? It's so distorted. It's crushing the tape to the point where it's distorting, and it wouldn't sound anything like that on digital. It would sound like a very clean P bass. which is a great sound too. But that's why his bass is so in your face, because they were smashing it to the tape and they were adding tons of low into it. I mean, and that's,
yeah,
we can't really do that to cutting the Pro Tools, but that's fine.
Yeah. Are there any plugins that get close to making that like tape authentic?
There are, but the thing is, you don't put. I don't know anybody that just puts a tape plugin on every track.
Right.
And for some reason, even though right now you're saying it, it's like, that's not a bad idea. It seems irresponsible to me, because at the same time we're living in this era where we're making digital records, and we're I mean, that's just kind of the vibe.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, man. I don't want to keep you. It's just so interesting to me. Like,
actually, I think my co-producer is walking over to here right now. Hey, Tim, we got to get back to work.
Well, Tim, dude, thank you so much for making time. I know you're a busy cat, and I really, really appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. It's always good to talk about music with a fellow music nerd.
Yeah, man. So thanks. BV popped up all moderator BV. Thank you for doing that. Popped up all Tim's like sites and every place you can catch him and find out what's going on. So go in there and check all these out. And Tim, dude, take care of yourself, buddy, man. Good luck with everything. All right, man.
Thanks so much.
Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. See ya.
Peace.